What's going on, listeners? Welcome back to Matt Goes to the Movies. It is Monday, which means once again we're here talking about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Once again, it's the trio. It's me, Rob, and Harrison from the Basement Binge. So, Rob, Harrison, welcome. 2 episodes left of this show, which doesn't seem fair, but an episode that really pushed the envelope forward, so to speak, or the needle, whatever phrase you want to use. So, guys, again, welcome.
Thanks for having me again. It's always a blast.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to being here.
Yeah, it's a lot of anticipation with this. It comes out on Friday, and like we've said before to listeners, we don't talk until today. Like, we don't talk about this episode at all. So it's a lot of like, oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited to talk about it. So with that being said, this is an episode that really, I think, pushes the needle and shows a lot of emotion as well. At least for me, it did. So, Rob, why don't we let you get started, where we're going to go with the 2-minute warning here and give a spoiler for your view of what we think, so we can get right into it.
Yeah, so last week I definitely had some issues with some of what was going on. I wasn't the biggest fan of some of the writing, but I definitely enjoyed it. And this week, there's a lot going on. Throughout the MCU, they've been kind of hesitant to really get into some of the social issues that are going on in our world that many people are very passionate about. And, at times it almost feels weird that these things are not represented on screen in the MCU, if it's supposed to be, an analog for our current world, or supposed to represent what our world would look like if these characters and beings and powers actually existed. And man, this week is really heavy. I mean, there's a lot going on this week that is either a continuation of themes and elements that have been brought up previously in this show, or just being introduced. And, some of the things I wrote down that are really, touched on at one point or another, certainly the idea of violence as a means to an end. Certainly, I think that's one of the central themes of this series so far. And if you think back to the last almost year now of certainly life here in America, and I know we've got international listeners as well. So, hey, quick shout out. Thanks for listening. But here in America, the violence as a means to an end is certainly a topic you might have heard something about. And we definitely see that with the Flag Smashers and their mentality and what they believe in. Acceptable innocent casualties for a cause you believe is right. It's definitely another one that we see Carly, defend very, very strongly. We continue to see race touched on. We see the concepts of supremacy, and not just supremacy in terms of race, but supremacy in terms of my group over your group. I guess really tribalism would probably be the right word there. Globalism, nationalism, use of force, immigration and refugees, corporatism, PTSD, and I even wonder if we're even talking about possible war crimes here when it comes to John Walker and Lamar's past. There's a lot that's being introduced here. There's a lot of big, scary, heavy topics that are possibly going on or overtly going on. I wonder if it's maybe almost a little too much. Like, do we really want all of this at the same time when we really just want to watch superheroes punch each other in the face? But there's definitely, and certainly with the ending to this week, it's going to spin some things into action here pretty hard. There is a lot of things being brought up and a lot of ideas being talked about in this episode that we really haven't seen in this form from the MCU yet.
Yes, great points there. Harrison, what are your thoughts on this episode?
Well, wow, how do you follow up something like that Rob started off with? I agree. This episode was really weird. I've been thinking a lot. One of the biggest things that I've been waiting for this episode to talk about, is specifically to Rob, is what was it like watching this episode with children? I don't know if you did watch it with your kids or not. So I'm curious to get your thoughts about that, because like Rob mentioned, thematically, intellectually, there's a lot of heavy, important, but very heavy ideas and concepts being expressed subtly and also not subtly. There's also just a lot of I don't know how to say this. There's just a lot of heavy imagery, and I just wonder what that would be like to watch with a kid, both with the obvious and the subtle. But on top of that, right, we can go down the same lane that Rob just talked about, or I can go down the total opposite lane and be like, this is the most exciting thing it is to watch as a love of comic book characters. I wrote in a review that I posted online for this episode 4, that they are getting all of these characters spot on, and it's tragic how spot on they are, for the bad with the ending of this episode, but also for the fun for pretty much the entire runtime. I was having so much fun, but also there was a heavy emotional and intellectual investment in it. So it's just everything that I could hope out of a series or movie in this format of a comic book movie and an action movie is all there. And I think that I'm so impressed with the balance of having the intense action, the heavy action, and both kind of like the dumb popcorn in your face action, but also in like the high stakes action, and then also in the story and how things are told. And I'm just excited to get into it because there is so much to talk about with this episode. And it seems like with kind of the way Rob introduced it, that I totally agree with everything he says, but what I was thinking about going into this episode to talk with you guys was down a totally different lane than what Rob talked about. And of course, I can have a conversation about what he said, but it's just interesting how this particular episode and this show, there's so many things to talk about. And not just like things that happened, but there are so many ideas and so many things to appreciate going on. I'm not conveying what's the thoughts that's in my head right now. It's just impressive how much there is packed in. It's unfair that we're only getting 2 episodes left, like you said, Matt. But, at the same time, with how much they're getting into one episode, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's going to be a crazy last 2 episodes, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, it's amazing how much they have really started to bring, to me, real world issues into these episodes, and really how well they're doing with it, because it's one thing to just bring it in and say, well, this is what's happening, but it's another thing to make it relatable and make it so that you want to see it inside the show, because regardless of where you stand on what's going on, you might not want to watch a show like this, or you might not want to watch Marvel to hear more about how terrible the world is, depending on your view. But the fact that it gets you emotionally invested in it, I think, is a testament to how well they're writing and what they're actually bringing in as part of this series. So I like this episode a lot. There's a lot of, to me, there's a lot of emotion in this episode that's subtle when you really think about the things that the characters are saying and the things that they find out. Specifically for me, there's one scene that I was really taken back by, and that's with Bucky, and I'll get into that. But I like this episode a lot. I think it's like darn near perfect in my view. But that's my portion of it. So, listeners, you're familiar with the show. That is the spoiler-free section, and we're going to get in right now to spoilers. So if you haven't watched this episode and you don't want to be spoiled, make sure to pause it, watch this episode, and come back and listen. So where I want to start, guys, Rob, I want to get your thoughts on this first after I bring up this point here. We start off with a flashback of Bucky in Wakanda, and we find out that how he was freed from these code words for the super soldier program and why he's no longer activated to become the Winter Soldier, which I thought was a really good scene, which led to later on in the episode, which I'll bring back up, to me, what felt like an act of he still wasn't trusted. And it seemed like he was really hurt by the realization that they still didn't have full trust in him. So, Rob, it opening up on like a small scene, but I think something that, again, with these episodes and what they've been able to do, the characters that didn't get a lot of backstory or moments to really shine, to me, this small little portion in the beginning, once again, is another example of why these shows are so important, because it gives these characters just a chance to be like, wow, they so feel like a full-fledged part of this MCU now, instead of, to me, background characters.
I mean, that's really been what Disney Plus as a whole has been doing, right? We certainly have covered that with, the Mandalorian episodes, how much more fleshed out some of these characters are than what they were given in the Star Wars films. Certainly, they've done a lot for many of those characters. We absolutely felt that way about Vision and Wanda in WandaVision. And we're really getting a chance to see more about Sam. We're getting a chance to see more about Bucky. And we're even getting a little bit more about Zemo. I've been just captivated by what Disney is doing with their Disney Plus series, and the way they've been able. It's kind of, we get this in comics a lot, where we've got your mainline Avengers series. You can subscribe to that, and it's got Iron Man and Thor and She-Hulk and Black Panther and Ghost Riders mixed in there now, and they go out and they fight, they punch the big baddies. And every once in a while, obviously the main A-list characters get their own, title every month. And then every once in a while, you'll get like a short 7-issue run of another character. Falcon doesn't typically get his own run for very long periods of time in the comic. Obviously, the time that he was Captain America, he had his own run, and then Steve Rogers had his own Captain America, run simultaneously. But these, they don't typically get, like, you don't get a Winter Soldier line. Like, that's just not something that gets published every month. Sometimes it'll get published as a short run miniseries, but he's not Deadpool. He's not Wolverine. He's not Iron Man. So it's kind of fun that the series are kind of working the same way as the comics, that we get these little mini series that give some of these characters that aren't maybe your favorite character more of a chance to shine. And it's really fascinating to see their characters get fleshed out more, their backstories, their motivations, just who they are as a character. Give them a lot more space to become favorite characters, to all of a sudden really get into somebody and be excited for who's going to be the future of the MCU. And it's awesome. But this opening scene, you're right, it's so good. Sebastian Stan, he just crushes in this opening scene. He's been, both Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan have been just fantastic, just pitch perfect throughout this whole series. And this opening scene, the emotion that is conveyed, I absolutely love it. And you're expecting fireworks at the end when we see the Dora Milaje come in right at the end of the last episode. And then to start this 6 years before, this is all pre-blip. Wow, it is quite a way to start off.
Yeah. Harrison, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that opening scene I had forgotten about, and all that happens in this episode later on before I rewatched today in preparation for this episode that we're recording. Right? I'm thinking about the things that I want to talk about. I totally forgot about the opening until it started, and it surprised me a second time. And the second time, I was really moved emotionally. One of my favorite things about Bucky in the MCU is a story of redemption. As someone who is constantly seeking for my own redemption in many ways, and as someone talking about myself who feels very flawed and feels like I need a lot of redemption, to see that so incredibly portrayed by Sebastian Stan in a character that's so complex in a way that it needs redemption is far beyond what I can understand. I was really just impacted by that. Like I said, that, right? And then I think about later in the episode, and it's just like big, bad action. Like, and to start with something so contrasted to that and have them flow so well together and be a part of a big coherent thing is just, I'm really blown away with. And I had some expectations and some hopes going in for this series, and especially after WandaVision. I expected to fall in love with Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes more, but I was expecting that it was going to be like a Winter Soldier type film, meaning Captain America and the Winter Soldier, Captain America 2, where it's just kind of like a big action blockbuster type thing. And to get those emotional beats, I'm really impressed with it, and I'm really enjoying, because for a long time, Bucky Barnes has been one of my favorite characters in the comics. in the animated series as I watch and in MCU. I know he's kind of like underrated. Or I wouldn't say underrated, not anymore, definitely, but he was kind of under the radar, is I guess what I should say, is that he was there to notice if you wanted him to, but for the most part, he was just someone that you turn the page over. And so to have him get his time in the sun is really, really fun for me.
Yeah, again, it's just what they've been able to do and make these characters important is pretty incredible. So, we get the opening scene, which directly ties into leading into the ending of the previous episode where he is greeted unceremoniously, so to speak. And the question is, how could you sit there after we helped you and release Zemo? And obviously he's a means to an end, but he's told he's got 8 hours, which to me leads into, again, one of the things that's just great about this, because you can see both sides of this. Because on one hand, when Sam, Bucky, and Zemo are talking, I understand Zemo's point, and I think he makes some very good points about Carly's too far gone. She can't be saved. I will see this through to the end, but are you guys going to? Like, once you're down this path, she's not going to turn back. It's only going to end one way. Sam, on the other hand, is more of, she can be saved. I can talk to her. And I just think it's a very, very interesting dynamic because, again, the best villains are not just villains. They're people that you can sit there and understand why they would maybe do something. You're not going to agree with it, so to speak, but that's what was so, to me, interesting about Thanos, was they made him believable. And because he believed so much in what he was trying to do, I didn't necessarily hate him. I just found him fascinating. And with Zemo, I'm finding him more and more fascinating as these episodes go along, just because of what he went through to make his conviction so strong. Because there's sometimes when he talks that he doesn't seem like a bad guy. He seems like somebody who's grieving. Harrison, I'll let you go first on this one. What are your thoughts on the scene leading right after that opening montage?
Just to make sure we're talking about the same one, where the member of the Dora Milaje is speaking to Bucky in
Yes.
the alleyway. I thought it was really interesting, especially to actually like hear the words, he's a means to an end, because like if there's one overarching theme that you can put over this whole episode, it's about the discussion, does the end justify the means? At least I would say that.
Right.
And so it's interesting to like hear that verbally said in an episode that so heavily talks about it. But it was also just so yeah. I'm just kind of going to repeat what you said, but in different words. It just fleshes out all sides of the argument from every perspective, right? Of course, the Dora Milaje, the people with the job to protect the King of Wakanda, are going to hold a grudge against Zemo. Of course, the people like Zemo are going to hold a grudge against super soldiers and supers in general. It's just amazing to get all of it fleshed out, the entire argument. And I also just think it's kind of interesting to see it play out, how Bucky just doesn't go and just throw Zemo under the bus, like, okay, we'll just give him the Dora Milaje. And just the continually complex gray areas about this entire thing that's going on, right? With the snap, with the blip, I'm sure there's a lot of things that I think it might be a lot easier for the means to be justified by the end, because things are confusing and things are really gray. I just love that that's so a part of it. Like a short conversation in an alleyway, fleshing everything out. I just think is awesome. And also to comment about what you said about Zemo being a great villain, and especially kind of as a foil to Sam. I think that the characters of Bucky, Sam, and Zemo are like the perfect trio in that they balance each other out in such great ways that it's fun when they're all moving together. That's why, even with Rob's complaints, how he kind of ruined it last episode for me, like we joked about, one of the reasons I loved it so much is that they were just like a fun team in their dynamics and the way that they contrasted and complement each other, which is just, I think, again, great writing to have all of those sides of it fleshed out, including through this interaction in it.
Yeah, Rob, same question to you. Where did you think, what did you think of where that conversation led?
I thought it was really fascinating to give a chance for Zemo's thoughts and feelings to be a little more fleshed out. When we first meet him in Civil War, it's a basic revenge plot. He doesn't care if he lives or dies at the end. He wants vengeance for what's happened, and possibly to see that never happens to anybody else again. I think that's kind of an A level, or a sub A kind of priority under the main heading of take out the Avengers for what they've done to me and my family. And I think we get a little more, fleshing out of these ideas and what he believes and why he believes it. And I feel like the scene is played very evenly. It's written very evenly. We're not supposed to necessarily come away from it thinking that one of these guys is right and one of these guys is wrong, other than the fact that one of them is going to kill, thousands of people in order to accomplish it. And certainly that's wrong. But I think, and this really, this is a theme that I think we really see throughout this series. I definitely felt it last week, and I absolutely felt it this week when we get to a later scene talking about, my grandfather served in World War II and all of those things. World War II was really one of the last times in human history we had true good guys and true bad guys. That's why there are so many first-person shooter video games that take place in World War II, because you can mow down as many Nazis as you want, and you won't feel bad about it at all. There was true evil on the planet. There were truly evil things happening unequivocally. You cannot say anything but pure, true evil that was happening. There's no defending it. It's awful. There was the Allies and the Axis. The Axis were clearly wrong. And then when you get past World War II, we immediately roll into the Cold War. We immediately roll into Korea and Vietnam, at least in the United States, as far as our major conflicts. And we stop really having clear-cut good guys and bad guys because there's always more nuance to it. We don't have really another Holocaust where it's clear that somebody's a bad guy. And that's what's really been interesting about this show is you think about Captain America as a character that was created in World War II. The very first time we think of him, he's on the cover of a comic book punching Hitler right in the face, and that's what we get. We even get, kind of a throwback to that in the Captain America First Avenger film. And he's kind of this holdover from that time when good and evil were pretty simple to figure out. It was pretty obvious who was who. And that's one of the things they're really playing with is, yes, we have people that are advocating for violence and killing innocent people as a means to their end. And we're going to say that's bad, but there's more gray to it than that. Certainly their cause they believe is noble. And Sam even makes reference to it. Listen, I'm on your side. I want what you want, but I don't want it at the expense of people dying. It's that grayness that we see in the world since, the end of 1945, really through present day. And I think that's what makes, this conversation specifically that we're referring to now, and as well as a very important conversation that happens later in this episode, so fascinating is just playing with the grayness, playing with the idea that good and evil is not as simple as just black and white. It doesn't exist that way in our world anymore. Certainly in here in the United States, and certainly I think across the world, there's a lot of people that would like it to be as simple as, well, if you believe like I believe, then you're good, and if you disagree with me, then you're bad. But it's never that simple. It really isn't. It's so much more gray. And I think that's some of the real concepts of this series and this episode in particular that I really enjoyed.
Yeah. One thing that with this scene too is when they're talking about, Zemo thinks it's going to lead to a path where either Carly is going to kill Sam or Sam's going to have to kill Carly. And Steve says, well, maybe you're wrong because the serum never corrupted Steve. And again, it's just very simple. And then there's nothing else said about it afterwards. But Zemo just says, well, there's never been another Steve Rogers, has there? And I like the fact that even Zemo could recognize how special like Steve was, how it was amazing that he didn't get corrupted and he stayed true. And never lost control, because there's a scene that's very similar at the end of this episode that's very similar to a situation in Civil War where Steve looks like he might lose his cool and could go for a fatal blow and does not take it. He realizes what's happening and he makes a different decision. So I just thought that was actually really cool that even Zemo could recognize how special Steve was and why, he was Captain America and why it seems, again, so wrong to have somebody else have the shield and have the mantle of Captain America. Minus Sam, who I still feel in this episode shows further and further that he deserves it. Anything that you guys want to follow up with on just that little comment that Zemo makes?
I have
100% right, Matt.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you, Rob, but I was going to say I love that even Zemo acknowledged Steve, but I also love the camera work in that moment, how after Zemo talks about it, the focus that it has on Sam. And I think, this is just, right, breaking my rule of creating theories, that Sam is going to take up the shield or take back the shield or whatever. He's going to take the mantle of Captain America because of Zemo, right? Not because Zemo's the best person ever, but I think because he understands what Zemo just said, that there hasn't been another person like Captain America. And clearly somebody like Captain America would take the responsibility of passing on that legacy to somebody who he could trust. And I thought it was interesting. I've been thinking a lot about Sam, the Falcon. He was on a jog, just a regular Army vet on a jog. And now look at it. Like it went from, he was on a jog, he got passed on his left a few times. Then he's, fighting Thanos. Like, holy progression. But clearly, from the beginning, the relationship that Steve so immediately had with Sam was because he liked him and trusted him as a person. Before he knew anything else about him, there was something about his person that connected the character of Steve Rogers to Sam. And I love, Matt, as well, that you brought up that moment in Civil War. The exact same position as John Walker as well. The same way he's holding the shield, everything. I just love that you brought that up because I thought about that as well. I've been thinking about what, now I'm forgetting his name, Dr. Erskine said to him that, he's not a perfect soldier, but he's a good man. And that's why Steve was right for the serum. I think John Walker is a great soldier. And the way he acts is as a soldier. Every single time he's a soldier, where Sam acts as a good man and maybe a soldier second or last. I don't know what order you want to put it in, but it's just interesting to see those two things, a perfect soldier and a good man, and the foils that they are to each other is just great. I don't know, like that one line that, kind of meant something cool, but could have been a throwaway, now leading to the entire conflict. And it's just great. And it's so fun to enjoy in this series because clearly we care about these characters after this long time. But like we've talked about at the beginning, like these are complex ideas it's cool to be able to have these characters be an allegory for these ideas that have relevance, have importance in the real world.
So, it's interesting you mentioned he's a good soldier, Harrison. I think it's one of the things that's continued to surprise me is they give John Walker like free reign, like he's running his own team. It doesn't really seem like he reports into anybody or that he is accountable to anybody. He certainly comes across as a good soldier who really needs a good general to command him because he is not capable of making those decisions in the moment or keeping the cool that your kind of control person who's sitting at the computer or back in the tent, at base commanding the operation would have, that's supposed to keep the operators that are on site from overreacting or overplaying a situation and, giving them permission, giving them the green light to move forward. I think it's a great analogy that you made.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah. So, Harrison, the next question I want to have you start off because Carly, you're a big fan of the actress in general, but she still falls a little flat for me. And one thing in particular that I really wasn't a fan of is when she is talking with what looks like maybe like number 2 in the group. And he talks about how, people need a leader and they need someone that looks like them and understands. And he says, what we're doing here will outlast the legacy of the Shield. That's not directly related to her. I thought that was I don't know. I thought that was a weird bit of dialogue because I don't think she's earned anything even remotely close to that. But again, some of her performance this week, it still just falls a little flat to me, and she's not totally believable. So what do you think about these scenes that we get with her where she's talking about, before we get to her and Sam's conversation, because I thought that was really good, just the events leading up to that first confrontation?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. I think that one of the reasons that I really like is I think Erin Kellyman has just a great screen presence, but I do kind of agree that there's some faltering going on with maybe the way that the stakes involved around the Flag Smashers have to be elevated a little bit to be a good, so that they can walk in pace with the scope of what's happening with, quote, the Shield, so to speak, right? There's this big conflict going on over here. We've got to raise the stakes over here. So I think there's some dialogue that does feel a little bit awkward that's trying to create that, which I think causes the character to fall a little flat. So it's more just like the actual actor's screen presence than it is the character. But I do think that the character is interesting to see how that guy that you're talking about, that second person, Dovich, and then even the guy that I'm sure we're going to talk about, Nico, how they are so like almost naive. No, actually, let me take it back. Wrong word. How they're almost more optimistic than her, right? That she's like, we got to take the people down. Like that scene where they're listening to the radio where they realize that they killed someone who was a father of a young family and he just started his job. Clearly, they're destroyed by knowing what they just caused. And she seems almost more affected by their response to it than her own response to it, which I just think that is just an interesting, again, gray and kind of darker gray character and difference to this Dovich and Nico guy, and almost their optimism in that these ends, what they're working towards is good, and that they want to accomplish it in a good way, where she's just like, she's so passionate about achieving her goal that whatever it takes, she's a little twisted by it. So I still love the character. I think it's really interesting, but I do agree with you. There's some moments where the dialogue is trying to force the stakes to be a little bit more that make it feel clunky.
Rob, what are your feelings on that? I think Harrison summed that up pretty well with it's sometimes forced that they seem more elevated than maybe what the show has shown us.
Yeah, listen, I think Harrison said it as well, better than I could have possibly come up with. Another example that sort of jumped out to me of maybe some clunky writing. There's a line in this scene that you're referring to, Matt, where the character that Carly's speaking with says, if you're doing something and it makes you scared, the guy's grandfather told him this story. And I think he specifically refers to the fact that his grandfather fought the Nazis. So that's supposed to mean something like, oh, he was a World War II vet. So that somehow makes him, a sage on these matters. But he says, if you're doing something and it makes you scared, you're probably doing something right. Listen, I can think of a lot of things that would make me scared. I could go to John Jones' house and make fun of him to his face, and that would scare the crap out of me. And that doesn't make it right. It would just make me a guy who's about to get punched in the face by a former UFC champion. Like that, it's such a stupid line. It's so dumb. Like my first watch through, I was like, ugh, like, oh, come on. Like, and then the second watch through, I hated it just as much. Like it's kind of lazy writing, like Harrison said, to elevate stakes that maybe aren't quite earned yet. The stakes are already there. We don't need weird dialogue to have impact there. Like there's so many. That scene really needed rewritten, I think. It didn't really work, and I'm actually conflicted about what I think is probably the next scene we're going to get to. I'm conflicted about how to feel about it.
I got to say real quick, Rob, that one scene you're talking about where they're at the grave, that one line that you mentioned, I think kind of ruined the entire scene that could have been really great and could have made that ending so much more. That the precursor to it was ruined by this weird line that was like, what? Like, just because you're afraid of something, it's suddenly good? Like, what? How's that match? So,
yeah, I could jump out of a plane without a parachute on, and that doesn't make it right. That just makes me a wet mark on the ground. Like, it's so dumb.
Yeah. Rob, why don't you, I mean, where are you going next? What scene are you having some trouble with? Because you brought it up. I'm sure it's the next thing that we're talking about. So go ahead, kick us off with this.
Well, so we get to pre-scene before that. Um, we see John Walker and Lamar confront our heroes three, and it's so weird to me because he says to them exactly, do you think two Avengers can just walk around Latvia? Yeah, so not just two Avengers, but two guys clearly in like full on 4th of July level USA red, white, and blue, and he's got the shield. Like, I mean, he actually gets recognized at a coffee shop without the gear on, let alone what would he look like with the gear. So these guys are just walking around Avengers and an international terrorist, which is one of the things that I've had issue with for the last 2 episodes. That these guys are just casually walking around like, oh God, it bothers me. So then we get to the next scene where Sam is going to go in on his own and he's going to have this conversation with Carly. I wasn't sure how I felt about it the first time. I was really hoping I would be able to have a feeling for how I actually felt about this scene. What's interesting is we've seen good guys confronting bad guys before in a non-confrontational way. There's no guns, no swords, no armor, no rockets, no machine guns, no weapons nearby. They're going to have a talk first. The fight comes later. We've seen that, but we've never seen it like this, where Sam, our protagonist, is really trying to get on the level with our antagonist and is really trying to understand and really trying to help this person, not just cause the end of the conflict, but really try to help this person, this human being, try to reach this person as another human speaking to a human. And I found that compelling, even if I'm not sure how I really feel about this scene. I don't know if I love it or hate it, and that's kind of weird for me. So I'm kind of hoping you guys can tell me if I should love it or hate it.
Ooh, Harrison, why don't you? Well, hang on a second. You don't listen to us about The Last Jedi, so I don't understand why we're.
We got it in early.
Trying to convince you of anything.
We got it. Boom. If for all the listeners at home playing the Matt Goes to the Movie drinking game, you know what to do. Time to drink.
Harrison, why don't you go first?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to say you should love it. But that's just my opinion about it. I thought it, of course, what you said, seeing Sam as, right, to use the popular nomenclature, a human talking to another human, and that it's a human interaction, and that's the biggest part of it. I thought was really interesting. I was like you, I was trying to remember, like, when was the last time I was watching like a big action movie where I saw the protagonist and the antagonist have like a genuine, heartfelt conversation with one another as like two people, besides just like big ideas and personalities clashing together. Like, one of my favorite things to quotes is from Transformers: The Last Night. Say about that movie where Merlin, he's played by I'm forgetting his name right now, but he's talking to the Transformer. He's like, big personalities clashing together. It's just like a hilarious scene that I quote, because like in action movies, it's big personalities clashing together, and you see all that taken away. You know, in the promotions before this series started, Sam was in the Falcon suit pretty much almost through the entire promotion period. Now we're in the actual series. He's in the suit maybe like 20% of the time. And to see that taken away and to see him not just be the Falcon, but to be Sam is really, really interesting. And then to foil back to John Walker, who's like, we got to go in there. We got to go in there. Like 10 minutes, you're going to give someone 10 minutes to build a connection that can lead to a good solution, not just for the world, but for a person. Like, you're going to give someone 10 minutes to do that. I just loved all of it. The writing for Sam, the writing for Carly, the writing for John, and the way that they're all mixing together, making some kind of evil concoction. It's just really interesting. And I love that they're letting the heroes do this. They're letting Sam Wilson be the person who would do that, right? Because what does he know? What if Carly just punches him and he turns up like someone else later in the episode? He doesn't know that, but what he knows is that he's going to make an effort, and I love it. Even if there's are flaws in the writing in the moment when they're interacting, maybe very few. I only had some on rewatch. The idea that scene now exists, I just love.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good in the scene. I do think it showcases Walker's inability to be anything but a soldier with just, I want to go in, but it's kind of like, he has Lamar, who is like, maybe we should wait and like, let's just hold it out. Which I'll get into him a little bit more later, but obviously we all three of us will. But I thought it was good. I specifically really like the part where, and I can't remember the exact line, but as Sam is talking to Carly about, Zemo thinks you're an extremist and, you'll kill me or I'll have to kill you. And I can't remember the line, but he says something to her and she immediately goes to the saying, like, she sounds like a supremacist. And he goes, wow. And she's like, no, I didn't I didn't mean it like that. You tricked me. Well, I didn't take it as really tricking her. In a way it is, but like he's showing her, if you're not doing this with a level head, or you are trying to go down this path, like that's how quickly it can turn. And before you know it, you're on a path that you didn't think you were going to be on. And how do you turn back from that once you're actually there? So I like that a lot. I thought it was a really good piece of writing, even though I can't remember the exact line. So I thought the scene was really, really well done and emotional, but it makes me have issue with a scene later on where she actually calls Sam's sister and threatens her, where even though like Walker came through, I really felt that you could tell that it was Walker who did that and it wasn't Sam's plan to not talk to her. So I felt it was just a little odd for her to sit there, call Sam's like sister, threaten her. And then when Sam goes to talk to her again, she's like, oh, you have to understand, I would never hurt her. Like, give me a break. Then why did you have to do this? The other thing I didn't like about the scene is one of the most cliche used lines in history when Sam says, I know what it's like to lose people. And she's like, not like this. You like, yeah, not like this. You don't like, give me a break. Like if I lose half of my Kit Kat down the drain and you lose half of your Kit Kat because the wind blew it out of your hand, like we both don't have a Kit Kat. Like that's just how it goes. Like nobody cares.
I mean, to be fair, I would care about losing a Kit Kat. I would feel terrible for you because that's like literally my favorite candy bar.
Right. Yeah. Like it would be tragic, but it wouldn't make it any less tragic how it happened. Like I don't know. Like I hate that whenever somebody says, well, you don't know pain like this. Like just give me a break. Like stop.
It's terrible writing when we see pain and sorrow in kind of a dick measuring contest. Like
right.
Really, like it. When's the last time that we saw that on screen and it worked? Because I'm pretty sure it's never.
Yeah. I mean,
and we keep seeing it.
Right. Harrison, any other thoughts on, and Rob, yours too, the fact that she was so quick to kind of pass off Sam? Like, again, I didn't like that transition of she's willing to talk and then it's, I'm going to threaten your sister. And then it's, well, I didn't mean it. I had to see, like, there was other ways to see if Sam was legit. I felt that was kind of forced.
Yeah, so I definitely felt that was weird. Like she had to call Sarah. She couldn't just like slide into Sam's DMs. Like there's 100 million ways she could have gotten to him to say, hey, meet me here. Let's have a conversation. Because he shows up in full Falcon gear because he's ready to go. And he's ready to throw down when what she really wanted was a conversation, to continue the conversation. So she threatens his sister. She threatens his nephews to have a regular conversation. Like as much fun as I'm having with this series, there's definitely times that sometimes the writing just doesn't hold up to the fun that we're having on screen. I think some of the writing issues that I have, just even like the way John Walker is written, I literally think anytime he's in a scene, the writers look at each other and say, okay, what is the most douchebaggery thing we can possibly have him do at this moment in time? And they take turns coming up with, nope, that's not douchey enough. How about this? Yep, that's appropriately douchey. Write it. Don't go back, just write it. Like, that's literally what it feels like, how they write John Walker at times.
Yeah. Harrison, thoughts?
I definitely agree with you that it seems like, I think part of the reason is that it's a series that's happening in 6 short episodes, and there's a lot that's happening that it feels like it's trying to be crammed in a short amount of time. Because I will say, I'll take the other side of the fence and say I think that it's consistent with Carly's character that's moving at a very fast speed, so it feels unnatural to like our rational processing of emotions. But I would say that Carly clearly is getting deeper and deeper in justifying her means for her end. And I also think that when someone's going through difficult emotions like grief and also feels like a deep passion towards something, there's almost, I don't know if you guys feel this way. Maybe me and Carly just connect. Maybe that's why I like her. I don't know. Not that I want to have anyone die. Let me clarify. But that when those emotions are so big inside you, it feels like the steps you have to take to get attention have to be that big as well. It's almost like your entire way of thinking is elevated to unhealthy measures. I've definitely seen that in my own ways. Like, I can't think of any examples right now, but when you're trying to get attention and you're feeling these huge, big, large emotions that you're probably not the best at processing, your way to seek out that attention is probably in a pretty stupid way, in a very impulsive, irrational, dumb way. But I do think that we're seeing like that realistic reaction just really accelerated because the episodes are so short. And I do love that Sam reacted by showing up in like full Falcon gear with Bucky in like full Winter Soldier gear. I thought it was awesome. Like, yeah, this guy's ready to throw down. Like, you don't mess with his family. And I just loved Sam's reaction. Like, I feel like his reactions are just so genuine, which makes me love him even more.
Yeah, he totally does. Everything that he does feels very genuine, and like him and Bucky, I do feel, they have stayed super consistent, where every reaction that they have to me seems like it's just gone with how the characters are going from episode to episode to episode. So I do really like how they have just grown throughout this series so far. It's just really fascinating to watch. But Rob, you mentioned, John Walker, and obviously his huge moment comes at the end of this episode, which we'll get to. But I think there is some credit to be had about how they are writing him, because it just makes you to me, it does make you realize again, like, this guy who is literally, again, like Harrison said it, he's a almost perfect soldier, because they even like make reference to that. Like, he's just a soldier through and through. He's gotten so many medals. He's done this. He's done that. Like, that's a soldier. Like, I don't know. They don't talk about what kind of person he is. Like, certainly he has this friend, but you don't really get to know him outside of a soldier level. So I think even though the writing makes him seem very like, oh my God, but it's because he doesn't know how to be any other way. And when he comes in and demands, after we find out that, well, he's got a vial of the serum, and he comes back in and demands that they hand over Zemo, again, like, he can't stop for 2 seconds and understand that, like, at the end of the day, it's not like Zemo's fault that everything just went downhill. It's his fault because he rushed in there. He was stupid. He didn't want to stick to the plan because, again, he doesn't know how to stick to the plan if it's not being a soldier, going in there, accomplishing the mission, maybe based on force, because that's what he's had to do. He can't just sit back. So I think they're writing him well in the sense of that's how his character is. But this is the scene that I was talking about with Bucky, where again, I thought this was a really good, like little small, like in tight quarters fight scene. But for me, what was really great about this was one, just kind of watching Zemo kind of inch off in the background and be like, well, see you later. Like really just getting out of there was when Bucky gets his arm detached. To me, the look on his face was just almost like pure sadness. And Sam says, did you know they could do that? And he said no. I took that scene to mean that he was really, to me, he was hurt that there was still a failsafe in place to kind of like immobilize him. Harrison, I'll let you go first. What did you think about this scene in general? The overcockiness of John Walker when they told him, like, I wouldn't do it, buddy. Like, don't mess with them. And his realization at the end, I thought was really good too, with his line of, they weren't even super soldiers. Like, wow, I'm so far behind the game right now. It's not even funny. What did you think of this?
Oh, I'm so glad we're talking about this scene. This is one of my favorites. Just the entire thing, from the moment John Walker walks in to the Dora Milaje. There's so many things that I could talk about in this scene. Just to go in order in the way my brain's thinking, even though you asked me about Bucky, which I'll get to, I'll forget if I don't go in order. I love that John Walker introduces himself and he says, "Hi, John Walker, Captain America." Like, the Captain America, he never leaves out. And we know how Steve Rogers introduced himself, even when he was talking to a tree of all things. I am Steve Rogers. Like, the difference in those characters. Wow, that's great. Like, that's such great writing. And one thing I just got to say about this series is when the writing lands, it lands so well for me. But there's like we talked about, those low points. That I just had to mention that. But I love the fight scene in the tight corridors. I loved how the Dora Milaje weren't just trying to like demolish everyone, even though they probably could. Like the way that one of them threw the spear to just kind of, disarm John Walker with his shield, right? It just the total different intentions in each character. The way that Sam and Bucky are just trying to like calm down everything and not really get involved, I just thought was great. But then to see Bucky lose his arm, I think, like you said, it's probably devastating to go through some. Well, I think there's two parts of it. Probably there's a lot that he was feeling, but the two things that I latched on is what you said. You're trying to go through some type of redemption. You're trying to be better than this Winter Soldier machine you were, and you finally feel this freedom that people around you can trust you, that you're worthy of freedom, that you're worthy of trust. And to have that almost like, well, we don't quite trust you yet. There's still a fail-safe, right? There's still this expectation that you might not be good enough. Like, oh my gosh, that would be so hard after all he's been through. Like you said, the other thing that I latched onto is that for so long, he was under the control of someone else. And I think that he, in addition to the redemption thing and being worthy of trust, there's also probably a little bit of like independence, that he doesn't want to be somebody else's tool that can be manipulated for good or bad by somebody else. He wants to be Bucky Barnes, and he just wants to be Bucky Barnes. He doesn't want to be Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, or Bucky Barnes with the vibranium arm that can be controlled by a Wakandan. Like, I think that there's probably two parts of it that's like, I'm still not there to this level of redemption. I know I'm going to say that word a lot, but as something that I'm always constantly experiencing in my own life, I can't help but see the way that it's expressed through the character of Bucky, and I love that moment, and like almost like just the disappointment when he realizes that they could disarm him, literally. I thought it was great.
Yeah, Rob, your thoughts?
I think that was brilliantly said. And when the Dora Milaje show up, I mean, it's just awesome. I mean, throughout the MCU, we've seen a whole bunch of them so far, and we have yet to see a single one of them give a single damn about anything other than Wakanda. I mean, they just show up. They care nothing. They're just going to crush you. If that is absolutely what they must do, they will not care about it at all. They are going to do what they're going to do. You will not stop them. I mean, I just absolutely love these characters. Give me a whole series of them just doing whatever. Like I will watch that. I will happily dig right into that. Throw Shuri in a little bit. It's going to be awesome. I just love them so much. And then when the fight is over and John just casually gets handed back his shield and she just kind of walks away is among, for me, the most badass moments in the entire history of the MCU. It is so just just ice cold, really, is what it is, and it's fantastic. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and once again, it's the little subtle moments, like Harrison was talking about. You see what Bucky's reaction is to losing the arm, and in just a moment, and he has another moment like this too. I want to say it was in the first episode. No, it was the second episode where he has the shield and he casually gives it back to John Walker. But he has a reaction to it. You can see that meant something to him to have to give it back in the middle of that fight scene. What we're seeing with Sebastian Stan in just these small moments that aren't dialogue necessarily, and blink and you'll miss it sometimes, are really adding to the fun of this series of really seeing these characters have a moment to shine on their own.
Yeah, they really do. And, this scene here where John Walker gets handed back the shield and he just realizes, where he kind of stands in the totem pole, so to speak, with some of these other these other heroes and whatnot. It's kind of obvious what's going to happen, but the one thing that I did not like is because it felt very forced and very cheesy dialogue, I did not like the conversation that leads to him, really actually taking the serum. I thought a lot of those lines were forced and like, oh, well, imagine how many lives we would have saved had we had that serum, and like, what would you do? And I don't know. I felt like a lot of that didn't really sit with me. I understand why he would take it, but again, like, I don't know, maybe because I don't really care. I just don't care for his partner. And one of my friends said to me, especially, coming up to the scene that we're getting to, like, you don't have to care about him. You just have to understand why John would. But to me, again, it's like, well, we should both care. Like, I should care that this is what's going, like, he's the reason why John would get pushed over the edge. And, similar to how it was before we had this show, there wasn't a lot of back with Sam and, Steve to me or Bucky and Steve, that was like, oh yeah, they're so connected to each other. Rob, what did you think about their dialogue about, taking the serum and what would, how many things they could have done differently?
I think it's supposed to be there to give a little bit more dialogue. I think, for as much as I've complained about some of the writing of Walker and that he feels kind of one-dimensional to me at times, I think this scene was supposed to humanize him a little bit and make what's about to happen next feel like a logical conclusion. The scene doesn't really blow me away. I kind of wish they would have done it. They could have accomplished the same thing they were trying to accomplish, but I think there was other ways they could have done it that would have made things more interesting. And frankly, Matt, to your point, make us care more about Lamar, considering what's about to happen to him, and the scenes that are going to come next, and have that actually mean something more than, oh, well, I guess we won't see him again. Like that was really, I had no reaction to his death. I have some thoughts on that moment. But as far as my actual reaction to it, oh well, like we could have had more.
Yeah. Harrison, what do you think about that scene? And I'll have a follow-up question here.
Yeah, I thought that the scene in the cafeteria, if I to put it as simple as it can, was to make it obvious that John Walker is going to take the serum for the people that wouldn't just like guess that he was going to. Like that was kind of like, all right, everybody, he's going to take it. And also try, like Rob said, to make him a little more fleshed out. It feels very soldiery, which is on brand for the two of them, but it doesn't go very far in. Well, actually, I'll say this. I think that to me, it makes them very soldiery in a lot of ways, but especially in that, like, they don't feel like they have much, like, brotherhood beyond just, like, we've been through something together that no one else can, right? But it's not like we're best buds type of thing. Like, we're coworkers, and because we have shared experiences, of course, there's, like, a relationship, but there's not, like, you get what I'm saying? The difference between the two of those, because like I'm thinking about a scene earlier that I just have to mention because I loved it, but to go back way before John Walker comes into their little house wherever they're staying, Bucky's gone and Sam and Zemo are talking, and Zemo's saying how like super soldiers can't be allowed to exist, and Sam says something like, "Well, if that's how you feel, what about Bucky?" And I love that Zemo doesn't respond to it, but just the fact that Sam would say that about Bucky. Even though they don't have the best relationship, there's almost like there's a genuine care and love for one another that you can feel between the two of them, even though it's a little bit humorous and competitive at times. But then it's almost, yeah, I'm dragging out a long thought to say it made both of them just feel more and more, going back to Lamar and John, it just made him feel more like a soldier. Not a very, really strong scene, almost just kind of like almost like a just necessary to avoid nuance scene.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Rob, you mentioned it. The big scene that leads to the ending of this episode is Lamar gets killed, and aside from not really caring that he gets killed, just because we don't have a lot to go on this guy, like even not even having a lot to go off of, he's never really, if you like look back, he's not really involved in the action except for that one scene where they were on top of the truck. Anything else that really has happened in these episodes, he's always like behind. He doesn't really do a lot. So that was another reason why I had a hard time being like, oh, geez, like that really stinks. But at the same time, I was a little taken back by Carly's reaction to it because, like, you think that Walker and this guy are somebody who wants to stop you. They're not going to, they're not going to let you go. Maybe Sam will, but Captain America and his buddy, they want you. They want to take you in. They want to put you in prison, whatever the case may be. And you had no remorse about killing people that were blown up in the building. Like, you literally said, violence is the only language these people understand. So I was kind of taken back by the fact that she seemed so like, oh no, what happened? Because to me, it didn't line up with some of the other things that she did, but maybe I missed something in between. Like, maybe it's something Sam said to her during their conversation. But before we get into the big, how this affects John, Harrison, did you see something there that I didn't as to why Carly would react the way that she did?
My thoughts were kind of two-pointed. That first, it's different to like set a bomb and then walk away than to like do something with your hands and see it so immediately. I think what kind of changed the reaction, but also like I don't think she intended for that result. So it was almost like a little bit of shock. Like, that's, like there's a difference between intentionally hurting someone and like knowing like, okay, they're hurt, versus accidentally hurting someone and being shocked that they're hurt. So I think that kind of led the reaction. I also think that the second part is that everybody in the room, including Sam and Bucky, understand the character of John Walker, and they are like, oh no, like it just hit the fan. Let's get out of here. Like I just love that moment that everybody understood that, sure, we don't really get Lamar. We get so little of him that like that moment for the character of Lamar doesn't mean very much. That moment for the character of John, it does mean a lot in the point of like, this guy's one moral compass is now gone, and you just pushed him that much further over the edge. So it's like two-part. That one, you just did something to him that pushed someone crazy over the edge, that doesn't know how to hold back, and usually immediately goes towards violence. You pushed him over the edge. And two, the person who keeps him from falling over the edge is now out of the picture and is the very reason that he's over the edge. I love that all the characters, the reaction to me felt more like, not like, oh no, I killed someone, but like, oh no, I just caused a bomb to go off inside of John Walker type of thing. That's what I got from it.
Gotcha. Rob, what did you pick up on in that scene?
So I appreciate where Harrison's coming from. Certainly, talking about Carly as somebody that it definitely, it's less personal to push a button and make a bomb go off and kill somebody than it is to actually get the blood on your own hands. To me, Carly has kind of presented herself as somebody who's fine with both. She certainly at least talks that game. The way I watched it, I hated it on my first watch through. On the second one, I felt the exact same way. It's where the stakes at this point, the fight that is happening, they're not pulling punches. These are killing blows that are being thrown. There are, one of the things that I do kind of, I'm going to go ahead and ruin this for everybody right now. Throughout this series, one of the things that really bothers me, and it stands out just super obvious to me, is it is really bizarre when they choose to use guns and when they choose not to use guns. Like, clearly the times they don't use guns are when the fight is supposed to be hand to hand and, maybe shield to knife and stuff like that. But it feels really out of place when there aren't guns in most of these fights going on. And it continues to be weird to me. And Walker even makes a joke kind of about it where he's like, what's with all the knives? Like, well, because that's what's convenient for this scene. Like the knife work, the attacks that are happening are intended to kill. Like to me, it felt like that was intentional. Like that when they killed him, they succeeded in something they were trying to do. It felt very much earlier when Carly was talking that she had every intention of killing Captain America, to kill the symbol, destroy the shield, and send a message with that death. I really felt like that's what she wanted to accomplish. And then they all stopped trying to kill one another to acknowledge that one of them succeeded in trying to kill one of the others. And it just felt like, it's this needle being dragged across the record moment where everybody stops and acknowledges, oh, hey, we were all trying to like kill each other. And hey, look at that. It actually happened. Well, time for us to get out of here. Like it felt very strange. Like if that was your goal, and I believe that it was, and there's still more super soldiers against John Walker than there are for him. It felt like that. It just didn't work for me.
All right. Well, let's talk about if this scene worked. What is the feeling on how this episode ends? Because now there's no going back. John Walker snaps, and he doesn't just, again, he doesn't just hit this guy. He pulverizes this guy. And to me, it's a very powerful scene, and one where I become anticipated for the fact that like Sam and Bucky realize what has happened. They don't get there in time. John has killed one of the Flag Smashers in broad daylight, and really after just seems to, he doesn't try to leave. He doesn't do anything. Like he stands there and then he casually like puts his shield back. Like it's like putting your cart in the corral at the grocery store. He's just like, boom, job done. I'm moving on. And it's like, wow, this is what Zemo's talking about with once you're a super soldier and once you're down here, like this is why they can't exist. And I'm very interested to see where this episode starts in relation to, are Sam and Bucky going to go directly after him? Are they going to try and talk to him? Like, how do you sit there and just let him walk away if you're Sam and Bucky after what you just witnessed? Rob, I'll let you go first. How does this scene work for you?
It's we kind of started this off by saying, man, it gets real heavy. There's some real action happening. There's real ideas. Kind of when we first started, Harrison was sort of curious about what it was like to watch this with kids, and it put them off a little bit. For you think about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and everything we get with it. I mean, this is the land of talking trees and raccoons. Like, we have that, and then we also have this dude smashing somebody's face in with the shield, and basically covering it in blood and bits of brain and whatever else. It was. I'm not sure I would have necessarily let them watch this had I watched it first before letting them see it too. I might have just skipped this part. I might have just paused it, sent them to bed, and said, "Yeah, he kills this guy, and it's not good." Mm. This is the point of no return. Things are going to start happening in motion, and what's been kind of interesting throughout this series to me is the loyalties that people show one another who are enemies, and trying to really figure out why this person is truly helping this, and watching those alliances flex a little bit, not necessarily always understanding why somebody's agreeing to be in an alliance with others. After this, and certainly with all of the cell phones that are rolling all through this, it will be very difficult for Sam and Bucky to back their fellow American at this point, who carries the shield of their friend, a man and an icon to many. It's going to be really hard for them to kind of back this guy. And I really think the ending of this is once again intended to be evocative of things that we are seeing in our world right now. A symbol of America, killing somebody who's not armed, with lots of cell phone cameras rolling the whole time. You may have heard something about this in the news recently. That might be a thing that people are talking about currently. So I think it's supposed to make people feel something about this. This is going to be a major event that will definitely impact the rest of how this series plays out.
Harrison, where does this land for you?
Wow. I wasn't expecting him to go this far with the character of U.S. Agent. The U.S. Agent does some pretty stupid things in the comics, and I wasn't prepared to see him be this stupid. It fit. As soon as Lamar died, I had some idea that the title, "The Whole World Watching," was going to mean something pretty heavy here pretty soon. But when the character of U.S. Agent was introduced, I had no idea that they were going to do this. And I'm really glad that they did, for part of the reason that Rob said, but also for further. One of the reasons that I love Captain America the Winter Soldier is kind of like Rob talked about earlier. If you can take a black and white character like Captain America, who literally just punched Nazis, when it was clear there is a bad and there is a good, and then challenge him with moral complexity in a modern, digital, complicated, evolving world like you do in Falcon and the Winter, or not Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but Captain America the Winter Soldier, and to have someone try to still stand upright morally in that confusion, I think is one of the great things that film has going for it. And continuing that with what we are getting now. And there's a moment where I just loved the cinematography. There's an upward angle where the camera's down low and it's pointing up at John Walker, which normally is like a power camera angle that you show someone in power, someone whose stature is really large and they have a large presence, and it's meant to evoke power. and almost like it definitely evokes power in a negative way, but flipping that where that I don't even know how to explain it. That upward angle, there's blood dripping off the shield. He kind of just locks it back, like you said, Matt, putting his shopping cart back, and just the cinematography just really nailed those feelings that you should be feeling home. It worked. It was devastating to see. It worked well for me. And one of the saddest things to me was that character that died by the shield. His name is Nico, and he's the character whose grandpa was a World War II vet. And I think about this. I'm probably dragging way more out of this than most people do, but this is what really, really affected me. Is this guy talks about how he liked Captain America, which I would assume is because of what his grandpa told him about Captain America as a World War II veteran. In World War II, Captain America was someone that you idolized, that you looked up to. He was the good of the good. And he did a lot of good within the MCU in World War II. And so to have someone who experienced that and had an icon like Captain America pass that on to a grandson who is then innocently, unfairly, brutally killed by that same shield. Like, that is just, oh my gosh, my stomach turns right now just saying those words out loud. Like, oh my goodness, this is horrible. Someone did that. Like that's now part of the history of the MCU, and it has some serious heaviness. But it's also really interesting, kind of like Rob talked about, how are Sam and Bucky going to react to this? Well, how the heck is the U.S. government going to react to this? Clearly, they're going to see footage of this, and I'm really interested to see what the series does about that, if anything. And I also think it'd be interesting to kind of explore the mindset of John Walker, right? Does he feel any sense of remorse or regret? Does he recognize that was a moment of rage where he severely misstepped? Not that is like, okay, you feel bad for it, like you're good to go. No, that doesn't change what happened, but I'm curious to see what his mindset is about the whole thing. And I thought it was if you're going to go that heavy, if you're going to go that far in a series, you got to handle it really well. And I thought the way that it happened was handled well. But I'm really curious to see what you think, Matt.
Yeah, no, I think I like that, thought about the character who, dies because of these actions by John Walker, and putting like a deeper meaning to it, because, whether or not that was the intention, that's one of the great things about the show and like doing something like this is I never thought about that, but listening to you talk about that, like, yeah, this guy probably had, just this super high opinion of, what Captain America was supposed to be. And, I can't imagine, I should say, like, what his thoughts would be, after even that first blow, because I'm sure that first blow probably crushed ribs. Because now, John's taken the serum, so he's super strong. And that first throw with the shield, like, it's not like he full-fledged. So I'm sure he crushed a rib there. Like, this guy's already hurt and in pain. And, and he's like, I didn't do it. Like, it wasn't me. And then he gets hit, and it's just like, yeah, it was really, really powerful to see that. So I'm really curious to how this next episode starts. But Rob, any follow-up thoughts to how Harrison broke that down?
Yeah, Matt, I'm like you. I hadn't necessarily put two and two together that this was the same character that was talking about idolizing Captain America, and to think that it is the same shield that we're talking about here. My stomach kind of turned a little bit as I was thinking about that. It'll be interesting to see next week if they start off right in the same moment where this episode left off, or if they start us somewhere else. I think that'll be really interesting. I think what I'm worried about is that they're going to try to show some kind of cover up on the part of the U.S. government, that they'll try to justify the actions in some way. I kind of hope that we don't see that. I kind of hope that this dude's sort of persona non grata, that there's no excuses made for him. But I kind of think that we'll see some of that next week.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting to see how the government will talk about this? Are they going to just kind of kick him to the curb? Like, what will happen? And if they do, like, again, Harrison mentioned it. What is John Walker's psyche about this? If they try to say, sorry, like, you got to go, like, what's his thought process going to be? Like, like, do you know what I'm doing for this country? Like, do you know what I've done for this country? Because again, he's very just, me, I'm Captain America now. So I'm just, again, 2 episodes doesn't seem fair. It seems like, oh my God, I can't believe it. It's going to be over. But there's certainly a lot to pack into these next 2 episodes in terms of what we got here. So, Rob,
do we know
what at the end of all of this, though? What are your thoughts? How does this episode hit for you?
I started it off by saying there's a lot of things that are being brought forward. There's a lot of elements that are either overtly or sort of under the surface discussed and brought out. And maybe it's too much, maybe it's too many. After going this long without really getting too deep into real world actual issues or giving us representations of things that people are familiar with, they throw a lot of it out there. At times, maybe it feels like they're going too many of those. They're trying to paint too broad a brush. This is one that I enjoyed. I certainly had some problems with certain elements of it. There were certain scenes that didn't work. There's certain things that I go, wait, why does that make sense? Overall, if we're into the ratings portion of it, I was ready to go as low as 3.5, but I'm not there. I'm at a 4 on this. Four reels out of 5. There's some things that I wish would have worked better. There's some things that I think were really compelling, and certainly things that, as you said, Matt, we've only got 2 episodes left, and to try to figure out how this is all going to get wrapped up in a way, because unless I'm mistaken, this isn't a situation like with WandaVision where we know elements of this that were set up will have a payoff or will be revisited again in something like Doctor Strange 2, or as we believe, things in the third Spider-Man film will deal with things that were hinted at in WandaVision. Unless I'm wrong, we haven't really heard that anything that happens in this show is going to have a lasting impact in this future film or this future project. It sort of feels like this will be contained, right? Unless I missed something.
No, I feel like you're right on that. I mean, they've talked about maybe a season 2, but for the immediate future of the MCU, it doesn't. They haven't talked about this being interconnected like they have these other things that we're getting so far. Harrison, have you heard anything, or are you in the same boat?
I was actually about to ask that. I don't think there is anything, and that's what makes it so interesting. Is like WandaVision is that you could kind of be like, well, okay, it didn't wrap it up, but it's meant to tie into something later. It's like, well, what the heck does it like? If there's story beats that are just not finished, not concluded by the end of the series, where the heck are they going to get picked up again? I have no idea.
Yeah. So Rob, you say that this episode's 4 for you. Harrison, where do you stand on this episode?
Yeah, it's really interesting to sit back and think about because I'm trying to figure out. It's interesting. Wow, let me slow down my brain for a second. It's interesting because through a series, what we started with in episode 1, and we're all the way over here in episode 4. This is so much different than Sam and his sister going to try and get a loan for a boat. Like, and where is that story going to continue, if at all, after what we just witnessed and what we just talked about at the end of this episode, right? How do all these things mesh together? And what's interesting is I was trying to do my snooping around like I always do, trying to peek behind the curtain. And I saw some some commercial for episode 5 released that, because when Disney releases those promos for the new seasons, it's just like footage we've already seen edited together. It's like, come on, give me something more. I found one where it actually had some more footage, and a lot of it was, so I'm assuming it was very limited, around the boat that was at the beginning. And so it's interesting to think, how do we go from this back to that? and how does that all mesh together? So thinking about the entire series, my brain's trying to understand how is this all going to be married together in 2 episodes that we have left. But as far to get to the actual episode, I'm going to go with Rob and say that it's a 4. I didn't get a total rewatch. I probably rewatched like the first 10 minutes. So there's a lot that I'm missing that hearing you guys talk about kind of reminded me of. And so it's, I would say that it's a 4 because for the most part, I just remembered the high points, because those high points from writing to cinematography, editing, characters, whatever, really, really land well for me. And that's what I seem to remember. And there was even more good that I forgot about by listening to you guys. But I also remembered some things that weren't the best. So I'd say a 4 because for the most part, I just remembered the good.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'm right there with you guys. I would say this episode's a 4, and sometimes I feel weird saying that it's a 4 because I don't know. I feel like sometimes I'm not giving this show credit by the end of it with like the reviews that I'm saying. But I like this episode. 4 out of 5. Certainly very, very eager to get to Friday to see where this starts. Like, that is the most fascinating thing to me about where this next episode is going to start. Are we going to skip time? Like, are they going to be back at this hotel or this hideout? Like, and Sam and Bucky are going to be arguing with John, like, oh my God, what did you do? Is there going to be a confrontation in the street? Like, how does this all play out? Like, how does this play out? I think that will really set the tone for the episode as to how that's going to be perceived. So I'm looking super forward to the next episode.
And where the heck is Zemo?
Right. Yeah. Where is Zemo right now? Because again, he took that casual stroll and got himself out of there. So it'll be interesting.
When will the power broker show up? That's the other thing. We hear another reference to this character, several times, and we see Sharon Carter briefly, and speaking about the power broker, and once again, we are given all of these breadcrumbs that we, the viewer, are supposed to take and interpret that possibly she is the power broker. However, we all know it will be Ralph Boner.
Right. Yes. Yes. So he will be back to spur us all again.
And just that damn red herring.
Yep.
It was Ralph Boner all along.
Exactly. Man. So I'm losing focus because
Rob Louise. It's like the funniest thing I've ever heard. I need that as a ringtone. That was so funny.
Oh my God. But Harrison, for the end of this episode again, let us know what do you have coming in the pipeline? When should we expect some new episodes? Because I know I'm looking forward to them, and certainly the episodes that you said you have coming up, from what we've talked about, have a pretty good following. So when are we expecting some new stuff from you?
Yeah, I realized the thing about your show being on every Monday is it helps me keep track of when I release something last. Sadly, the last episode I released was a monthly update, which was like more than a week ago. But the episode I'm working on, Your Name, I was like really, really impacted by that film. And I just felt like I needed to take longer to develop it to adequately express what it meant to me. One of those moments where, in the internet of trying to enjoy your creative endeavors, there's a little bit of just a constant churn that you have to have for relevance and to not be forgotten. And sometimes there's moments, at least for me, where I had to slow down to enjoy the cathartic, personal, creative side of it instead of just feeding the internet beast. So yeah, that's one episode that I'm very, very excited for, is wrapping up my unexpected, unintentional animation season with Your Name, Weathering with You, and My Neighbor Totoro. And then getting into some great action movies, Mission Impossible, which I've never seen any of them before, okay? I know, I'm shocker. I haven't seen a single one. And last Black Friday, I bought like the Blu-ray combo pack because I've been so excited to watch them. And there's so many days I'm like, I want to watch Mission Impossible, but I have to wait. So I'm hoping that I can get your guys' opinion on those too. But yeah, that's what's coming. Is specifically, hopefully tomorrow or Wednesday, the Your Name episode.
Rob, I have a question here at the end of this episode based on Mission Impossible and what Harrison just said. But do you remember Mission Impossible 2 being released in the theaters?
Vaguely, it was a long time ago, but I'm pretty sure I actually saw it in the theaters. I know I saw the first one in theaters, but the second one I'm not positive if I saw it in theaters or at home.
Yeah, Harrison, I really do like the Mission Impossible movies. It's one of the few series, and Rob, I think you and I talked about this a little bit, where to me, it's rare that after 7 movies, it's getting better. Usually by now, those things are just in the dirt and they make them because they're super cheap and they make money overseas. That is not to me, that's not Mission Impossible at all. It's actually a movie that actually has gotten better over time. So I'm just really impressed with those. Rob, do you have a feeling on the Mission Impossible movies?
Yeah, there's a couple of them I've missed. So, in anticipation of Harrison's breakdown, I'm going to make sure I go out and check out all the ones that I haven't had a chance to go through yet. There's some real highs and lows, and I think the series took some time off. Long gaps in between. I think 3 and 4, which was actually for the best. And it gives us another excuse to talk about Henry Cavill and his mustache, and it's an excuse for Matt to rewatch the Snyder Cut for the 75th time and appreciate the lack of Henry Cavill's mustache.
Yes. The reason I was asking about Mission Impossible 2 is because obviously the box office is not what it once was. It certainly seems to be making a comeback with Kong vs. Godzilla as more theaters were opened. But way back when Mission Impossible 2 came out, because I remember just reading about this and it being like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. The opening weekend back in 2000 for Mission Impossible 2 was $54.7 million for the opening weekend. And it was just this huge thing about, oh my God, this is the biggest opening weekend in history. Which was really crazy, which was really funny because of the fact that you think about now and there's movies that opened to over $200 million on opening weekend. So it was just really funny when this first came out to think of how little that actually means nowadays. I just find that
$50 million. $50 million. That's what the theater down the street from my house made on Endgame alone in the opening weekend.
Right. It's wild to think about how far it's come with the box office being what it is. Again, certainly not to the extent right now, but just back then for it to be this huge monumental occasion that this movie had made that. But yeah, Harrison, I really look forward to seeing those Mission Impossible reviews, especially too, because it will be a, completely fresh set of eyes on them where you've never seen anything with Mission Impossible before. So I'll look forward to those a lot, and that'll be fun. Certainly looking forward to that. But
yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to it as well. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk about it and to be here with you. I got to say, though, I couldn't let you end the episode without saying I'm so jealous of your ability to host and guide this conversation with what I assume about notes. I'm going to bring this up every time because it just blows my mind how you do this. It's like, I don't preach into the choir here, people. But if you are not listening to Matt Goes to the Movies, you got to, just to be astonished at Matt's ability to control the chaos that is Rob and I. And to have a fluid conversation. I can't. You're so great at this, Matt. It's like you were born to do it. So thanks for letting me to be here. That sentence didn't even make sense, and that was just one. Oh my goodness! Just thanks. Let me try that again. Thank you for letting me be here to be a part of this great conversation that you guided.
Yeah, no, it's always a lot of fun. Rob almost broke me with it almost completely threw me for a loop, but the real impressive one will be when we do Star Wars and I have no notes for 9 movies.
Yeah, that would be true. I'm also hoping that for the longest time, I've been wanting, way before when the Basement Binge used to be the 3, me and the 2 other guys, we thought about it would be hilarious to do like a mini series that we called Binge the Cringe, where we watch like a horrible movie or like a movie that's generally not loved, and that we'd flip a coin or like draw straws or something, and one of us would be like the jury, one of us would be the defending, and one of us would be the prosecuting, and they'd have to convince the jury member whether the movie was good or bad, no matter what they thought about it, whatever straw you draw. And I think that would be hilarious to do with The Last Jedi. I think that would be so funny to do with the 2 of you. But I just, yeah, especially if Rob has to be the defending.
Oh man,
Harrison, Rob, like literally we have to go. If you keep them, we have to scroll back through our text. I'm not kidding. Rob has said the exact same thing to me.
Yeah, I think we were talking about calling it Matt Puts a Movie on Trial.
Like literally Rob has talked about like, oh, we should do something like that. Now, quite frankly, I think if we're going to do cringe movies, let's do like Elektra or Batman and Robin. Yes, Catwoman, Daredevil,
Triple X.
Oh my god. Oh. God. All right. You know what? Let's just record another episode right now. but well, you've certainly given us a lot of ideas for some future content. So, but to everybody that's listening right now, again, like, thank you so much. We've got a little bit of delay here though, guys, too, before Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki. There's a month in between this series and Loki, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, I think that was supposed to be the period of time they were going to allow for Black Widow, which is now punted further into the summer, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting thing to digest this and not have any content until Loki, which looks amazing. I'm going to avoid any other trailers for it. They did just release a new trailer for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which Harrison, I think there's 2 different ones that they released, and I have not watched any of them. I'm going to stay clear for these last 2 episodes of any kind of spoilers and just kind of see what happens. And I'm going to do that with Loki too. If there's any more trailers or anything, I am completely just, nope, I don't want to see it. Let's be surprised by this. Rob, what are you guys doing with that? Are you avoiding that stuff going forward for these shows?
100%. I will watch kind of the initial one to sort of get excited about a project or have a rough idea of some things that I want to see in it. And then outside of that, I don't want anything that's going to tip me off too much. I think we've talked about this several times before, but I love the fact that on these Disney Plus shows, we don't get a next time on, whatever the show is. We just have to sit and wait patiently, or not so patiently in our case, because we're like rabid dogs, like, just give me more. I want more, but there's literally nothing spoiled. We don't know anything that happens next week at the end of this episode. And I love it. I love that they do that. And I wish more, prime series, the kind of shows that people talk about around the water cooler at work. I wish more of them were like that. So there's less to spoil.
Yeah, Harrison, are you avoiding anything else that's coming out for Loki?
I always try to with like everything, and then I'll get in like my news feed like new trailer for this. I'm like, okay, I can't click fast enough. So like I always say that I'm going to try to, and then I fail. So maybe because I know that the 2 of you are, and that I won't have anyone to talk about the trailer to, I'm going to avoid it. Maybe I'll try. I'll try this time with Loki, and I'll see how it goes. I'm sure it would make it a lot better. So I will try it. We'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, listeners, again, we're going to be back next week with episode 5 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Thank you for everybody that's been listening to these episodes. They actually have been going really well. And, the audience has grown since WandaVision. And, I hope we mentioned that we always appreciate that. So anybody that's come over from the Basement Binge and listens to this show as well, thank you so much. And anybody that listens to this show, if you haven't, the notes for the Basement Binge are with this episode. Go check out Harrison's show. It's awesome. He was a huge inspiration to this podcast. And as always, thank you to Rob for helping with these episodes. And we're going to see you next week, guys. Thanks again for listening.